Connor, all set?
Take it away.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to this school committee meeting. Today is Monday, December 14th, 2020. At this time, I'd like to call this meeting to order, and I'm going to start with roll call of the school committee. Maya Plotkin.
Here.
Charlie Donahue. Don't see Charlie. Okay. Tony Mullen.
Here.
And Amanda Phillips.
Here.
Hey, hello, fellow school committee members, and for those of you who don't know.
Saying that she's at a town meeting, so she's just observing from afar.
Yes, so she's multitasking and
What's that? Do we know what that is? Okay. All right. So at this time,
No.
I want to, well, this is a different sort of school committee meeting. And at this time, I want to recognize that we're joined tonight with the town's select board and the Finance and Warrant Commission. Members are all in attendance, and we're going to get to that in a minute. Before I get to welcoming everyone, though, I want to recognize that this is a live broadcast, and online stream is available through the Westwood Media Center, and also online at westwood.k12.ma.us/live. This is to provide real-time public access to our activities in accordance with the March 12, 2020 executive order of Governor Baker. So before we get into our actual discussion items, we want to know who's on the call today. First, I want everyone to know that our superintendent, Emily Parks, is with us here today, as well as Sarah Cronin, the principal of the Hanlon School. And then, of course, we have the town select board. I welcome Mr. John Hickey, chair of the select board, Mrs. Nancy Hyde, and Mr. Michael Walsh. Thank you all for joining us this evening. All right, and then welcome, and also the FinCom chair, Peter Lentz, if you could or would tell us who's with us here tonight and introduce the FinCom to us, I'd appreciate that.
Yeah, I don't have everyone on my screen, so I don't have exactly who's here. I know George Leham, George Hertz, Diane McCarthy, Peter Ittig. Let me see. I'm sorry. I'm just looking at the Hollywood Squares here. Craig Fuscaldo. So we certainly have a Tom Kilgariff. I'm sorry if I don't have everybody on my screen.
Okay. Is there anyone out there who wants to just kind of say, hey, we're here from FinCom that Peter hasn't mentioned?
Hi, it's Angela Hughes. I'm here.
Hi, Angela.
oh, Bruce. Sorry.
Who is that?
Hi, Chris Parita from the FinCom is on too.
Hey, Chris. Anyone else? Okay, we also, I see that we also have our I feel like Miss Jean on Romper Room, and boy, that's dating me. But I do see our town council is here, Pat Ahern, and I think that I hope I've covered everybody. So if I haven't, you please excuse me. But welcome all of you. Glad to have you here. This is an important meeting. This is a discussion, an opportunity for us all to talk about the school building project. And so we have the next hour to hear about the project and to field questions from our fellow boards in town, anything that you have pertaining to this project. And so at this time, we'll move to our discussion item, which is the elementary school project. And attending also, you should know, is Tim Bonifati and Chin Lin of Compass Project Management, and Don Walter and Rob Fitzgerald of Dorr and Whittier. So at this time, I am going to turn the screen over, if you will, to Maya Plotkin, who's chairing the school building committee. And Maya, you want to proceed from here?
Thank you, Carol. I just want to thank everyone for joining us tonight. As Carol mentioned, the school committee is hosting this meeting because we thought it would be most efficient to provide an update to this project to the select board and to the Finance and Warrant Commission at the same
May I?
time. Yeah.
May I? I'm sorry. I did miss one. I'm so very, very sorry. In addition to the select board, I should also add that Chris Coleman is here as well as Pam Dukeman. So I apologize to Chris and Pam. I can't see everybody on the screen, but okay, proceed. Welcome.
That's fine, Carol. And I do know who Miss Jean is. Thank you.
So glad. Thank you.
So anyway, we just wanted to take this time. I think we're going to give a brief presentation, probably about 20 minutes to half an hour, on the current status of the building project, and then open it up to any questions you may have. Again, we thought we'd do this as a joint meeting because we were going to update you individually and figured, people probably have the same kind of questions, and it's just more efficient for everyone to do it all at the same time. So we thank you for indulging us in this non-conventional meeting. With that, I'm actually going to ask Rob Fitzgerald, our project manager at Doran Whittier, to start sharing his screen. So I can see that. I'm hoping everybody else can see it as well.
Yes. Yes.
Great. So Rob, if you want to get to, so here's the agenda. We are going to start giving you an overview of the schematic design, both the inspiration and the actual project that we have at the moment. We'll talk about project schedule and phasing. We'll get into the cost estimate of the project, and we'll talk about next steps. I know that there may be some questions about the timing of the vote for this project, and we're certainly happy to address those. I think if we can get through this presentation first and maybe talk about the project itself and the phasing and the estimates, then once at the end, once we've presented on the project itself and we're into the questions, if anyone has questions about the timing of the vote itself, we can certainly address it then. But I thought it might be best just to get the project stuff out of the way. So without further ado, Rob, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Great, thanks, Maya. So just to give a little background to the project, where we started off was understanding the community context and the context of the site where the school was being planned. So the current proposed project is being planned to be built right behind the existing Hanlon Elementary School site, which is shaded in pink here. The existing site is about 8.5 acres. The proposed site is about 9 acres approximately here, which encompasses a small section of land from the Shuttleworth 37-acre property. And then surrounding it is over 300 to 400 acres of conservation and land trust land. So looking at the woods as inspiration, we really started to get a feel for what the school wanted to be. The phrase "a school in the woods" was coined, and really has kind of carried through our thought process as we envision the school, taking into consideration the different materials, the stone, the earth, the wood, and begin to formulate our ideas behind exterior materials palette. Trying to stay with the neutral grays and brown colors. We also held a number of meetings looking at inspiration for the exterior of the building. We both had, the school building committee had an aesthetics working group, which looked at this and provided feedback. We also opened it up to the full scale building committee, and then had a community forum as well, where we had this online forum or website that allowed us to get input from the community as well. So all of that kind of informed the direction and shape of our current plan. So looking at the site plan, the existing Hanlon School is this dashed area right here. And the existing property line for the Hanlon School is approximately right here. So the idea was really to try and minimize our impact into the woods. So one of the things that we've done here is integrated the fields to be closest to Gay Street, basically closest to community access. So we have a parent or a bus drop-off loop here on the northern side and a parent drop-off loop on the southern side, with ample parking spaces and community use of those fields. Kind of creates a green belt, if you will, connecting to the rest of the community. And then looking at the building itself, this section of the building is the community side. The gym, the cafeteria, and extended day spaces are all in this area of the building. As you progress further west, you have what we're calling the private spaces. So it's the classrooms and the academic wing, and those all face into the woods. And so, again, like fingers, reaching out into the woods to try and integrate that into the layout of the building. So one of the updates that we have from that site plan resulted from meetings that we had with the police and fire chiefs and the desire to extend this access road. That previously we had a turnaround space here and exiting out here, and they really wanted to have a second way out. It's not a requirement by code, but it is an important safety factor. So we've integrated this now into the project and just obtained recent pricing that included that access road extension. And this also shows, there's a couple of play areas on this backside with easy access in the cafeteria. Looking at some renderings that we've developed, this is a view from Gay Street. Looking at the building, this is the gym over here on the right, and this is that academic wing, the entrance in the middle. This is a view from Gay Street at the northern side of the entrance, where the buses would primarily come in, but there's also faculty parking in there as well. This is a view from the central pedestrian walkway. We know that the Hamlin School has a lot of walkers, and so we wanted to create kind of a nice walkway that's pedestrian friendly and easy to access and get to the main entrance. So it's walking by the athletic fields on both sides. This is a view about midway up that walkway. Again, this is a soccer field over to the left. And then this is further up on the bus loop, the main entrance here, the entrance canopy, again, the gym and the classroom wing over here. As you start to look at these images, again, some of the things that we're doing is trying to have a more kind of a natural landscape, more of a woodlands appearance. Again, trying to fit into the landscape of the site. This is a view from the parent drop-off loop. And then the visitor parking area here, kind of opening up this entrance area so there's a clear view to the main entrance of the building. This is of the southern classroom wing. So one of the things that we paid real close attention to is the solar shading. So all of the classroom wings are oriented to the north and south for daylighting. So on the southern wing, we've integrated these elements to provide shade on the southern side of the building. This area right here is a STEAM porch: science, technology, engineering, art, math. There's an art classroom here and a science classroom on this side, and this is the library. So offering up an outdoor classroom space for all kinds of different activity to happen outside. This is a close-up view of that space. And then a bird's eye overview of the entire building, so you can see it all together. Moving into the floor plan, I was mentioning the public and private spaces. So here's the public area here and the private wing, private area. So for example, this becomes important after school gets started and all the kids have arrived. These doors will lock, and then after hours, if after hours during an event, you can lock this door here so that it separates this part and the rest of the building. And this is the second floor. So kindergarten, first grade in this wing, second and third on the first floor, fourth and fifth on the second floor. The library media center spans both floors. This is a view of the cafeteria. So the main entrance is here, the administrative area here, extended day with easy access to after school events. The cafeteria, there'll be a platform here. So this will be sort of like a semi-auditorium type of setting with a flat level floor. And the gym is over here on the right. Looking at a classroom wing, these are kind of a standard sort of layout for each of the wings. So we have classrooms that surround this extended learning area. One of the ideas is to allow teachers to collaborate with other teachers out in this space, or to have projects where they might work on with students with easy access from the classroom out into that area. This is also an element that happens to work out pretty well during these COVID times, where additional space for spreading out students is important. So that will facilitate that in the future. And then there's also meeting spaces for morning meetings if teachers want to get together with a group of students. Wow. This is an image of the library floor plan. So this is a central area in between both wings, and then leading out to that steam porch outside. And then the second floor with some openings to down below, so you can look down and have a sort of connected feeling that both levels are connected. And then looking at the sustainability aspect of this project. So we've been working really hard with Eversource, the utility company, as well as our engineers to fine-tune the building in a way to provide a very low energy use. So currently we're tracking 21 EUIs, energy use intensity, which is very low. There's a possibility to get some incentive money from the utility company if we can stay under 25. So that's something that we've been looking closely at. This building is planned to be a net zero energy ready building, fossil fuel free. We're using geothermal wells. So it'll be all electric. We're integrating photovoltaic infrastructure systems into the building with the ability to provide photovoltaic panels on the roof if desired. The ventilation system is a high performance system, dehumidification, where the air comes in low and raises up high. So there's a lot of indoor air quality features that work well with that. And the exterior envelope, we've got super insulated walls and roofs, again, all leading to this low energy building track that we're on. We're targeting LEED silver currently, and we'll continue to track that as the project moves forward. This image here just shows carbon intensity of all electric buildings over time. So this project is going in the right steps in terms of climate change. So looking at the overall project schedule, here we are here in this red dashed line, essentially. We are planning for an MSBA submission for the schematic design package coming up in February. Then in April, the MSBA will take a vote, and in May and June are currently the planned town votes. Then we go into design development for 4 months and 7 months of construction documents. So that kind of makes up the design side of things. Bidding out the project in May, June of 2022. So this is basically a year and then another 2 years of construction. So May, June of 2022 with a move-in approximately March 2024, and then completing the rest of the site. So how that looks in terms of phasing, so phase 1 would be to construct this fence that separates the existing school from the construction site, and providing a extension of the woodland trail that connects out to Lowell Woods. So currently the trail comes basically right through the site here. So we want to allow community members to continue to use the Lowell Woods during construction. So creating a little path for that to happen is an important piece that we've integrated. Phase 2 is constructing the new school, which is that aspect is approximately 19 months. Phase 3 is to move students from the existing Hammond School into the new building. And then the 4th phase is remove or abate and demolish the existing building, and then complete the remaining fields out on this east side of the site. So leading up to our construction cost, for those members in the room that may or may not be familiar with construction cost versus project cost and the terminology, construction cost is really associated with the construction of the site and building. So we'll be preparing drawings and specifications that will go out to bid, and when the bids come in, that's what those costs represent, are the construction costs. Soft costs are any remaining costs associated with the project. So that would be consultant, fees, architects, engineers, owner's project manager, commissioning agents, permitting, testing, owner contingencies, anything loose in the building like furniture, computers, and so forth. All of those costs get incorporated into soft costs. And the sum of both of those together form a project cost. And that's the number that goes out to bond. And then alternates are essentially items that are desired to be included in the project. If the bids are favorable, then the decision can be made on bid day whether to accept them or not accept them into the project. So the numbers that we've been targeting up to now has been 70.3 million construction cost for an overall project cost of 88.1. During the schematic design phase, we put together our drawings and specifications, and at this level of design, and we had a professional cost estimator, and the owner's project manager, Compass Project Management, also had a professional cost estimator look at the drawings and specifications, and they both put together their separate cost estimates. And they developed, they submitted 2 cost estimates. One was a little bit lower, one was a little bit higher. And after marathon day-long session, they reconciled, it's called the reconciliation process, and settled on this number here that both cost estimators agreed on. So this was about just a little under 700,000 above target. Some of the reasons for that included the desire to go to a natural gas emergency generator instead of the biodiesel. We've included radon mitigation. The schedule got extended, mostly due to the COVID change in town meeting. Access road extension and some ledge removal. So that it was expected that the numbers would come in a little bit higher than we had anticipated. And so what we've done is prepared a number of value management items that we had priced out by the cost estimate as well, that amounted to about 2.4 million. So the next steps is for the school building committee. They divided up into different groups, and they'll be looking at all of those items and essentially put them into 3 buckets. Do we accept the value management item? Do we make it into an alternate, or do we not accept it? And so that'll be the process moving forward in January. One of the items that they do, the school building committee has decided on wanting to incorporate as an alternate is the ultraviolet light system that gets integrated into the HVAC system. This is kind of like a belts and suspenders approach to dealing with the current situation that we're in. And so it was just this added feature. So that's being considered as an alternate. So this was that was the value management piece that the committees are going through. This is a construction cost comparison of similar projects. So just to see, just so you have a sense of where this project is in relation to other similar projects. So these are other elementary schools in other communities that are roughly in the same sort of construction start timeline. You can see some of them are a little bit earlier, some are a little bit later. And each of them has similarities in terms of their sustainability goals. So they're all new buildings. This project has geothermal as an alternate with no PV panels. The Westboro School does have geothermal system and PV panels integrated into the project. The Wellesley Honeywell Elementary School does not have geothermal, but it does have PV panels. And then the Ashland School does have geothermal and also has PV panels. So you can see the Westwood School project kind of falls in the middle. You've got a couple that are a little bit less and a couple that are a little bit more. So I'll turn this back over to Maya to kind of walk through the next steps and answer questions.
Thanks, Rob. So just to give everyone a sense of where we're headed. So today, December, we're having this joint meeting. Tomorrow we have a community forum where we're going to give a very similar presentation to the community. And, again, as we've been doing all along, give the community an opportunity to ask questions, to provide feedback. A lot of that feedback has actually informed this process along the way. So we're excited to have that community forum tomorrow night. In January 22nd, the SBC will meet again and will go through the value engineering items that were identified and make decisions on those, so that hopefully at the end of that meeting, we'll have a much better sense of what this cost will be, and we'll be able to bring it back in line. On February 5th, the SBC will then vote on the whole schematic design submission to the MSBA, and that will include the budget that was discussed on January 22nd. That week between January 22nd and February 5th will give the SBC a little bit of time to reflect on what we discussed at January 22nd meeting. And if there's any remaining questions or observations, we can certainly deal with those between those two meetings, and then take the vote on February 5th. And then the design team will submit the schematic design package to the MSBA on February 24th. In April, we will be on the agenda for the MSBA board meeting, at which point the MSBA will hopefully vote for the reimbursement amount and finalize that. So we will know that for sure With our, I should mention, with our schematic design submission on February 24th, we also will be submitting what we believe will be the MSBA reimbursement amount. And Tim can speak a little bit more to this, but from what I understand, we'll know within a couple weeks if that is within target of what the MSBA is looking at, or if we're off base. So we will know in February, early March, a rough sense of what the MSBA reimbursement amount will be. And that's the amount that we anticipate will be approved in April. And then finally, in May, we'll have the town meeting. We will go before the town for the vote. And in June, we will have a special ballot vote for the project. We will have, in addition to tomorrow night, we'll also have a few more community forums, but we're not quite sure what those dates are. So we'll be announcing those as we decide. And then finally, we did put up some annual town meeting FinCom meetings, just, to keep we're aware. We will be coordinating with FinCom in the next week or two to really understand the process and when we need to be back. But we figured we'd put up some of the meetings that related to the warrant process. So those are the next steps for this project. I think at this point, Rob, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the next slide is questions. Is that right? Yep. Okay. So that was, I know, a lot of information in about half an hour. But, I'm happy to open it up now to questions or comments. We'll leave the presentation up in case we need to refer back to slides, but, feel free to, I think the best way, I think we're a small enough group that people can just start speaking and ask questions, and I'll direct them accordingly.
Hey, it's John Hickey. I guess I'll go first.
Hey,
Someone
John.
had to go. Thanks for hosting this meeting, and I really thank you for your leadership in the school building committee. This was obviously a tremendous amount of work. I do just have a couple of quick questions because maybe I missed this. Are you and Rob using the term make an alternate and value engineering as the same concept? Because I guess
you know what, I could answer that, but I'm gonna let Rob give the official answer.
So I guess I'm looking for a little bit more definition.
Clarity. Yeah,
I understand value
understood.
engineering, but
Yeah. So right now we've got the value management as one big bucket, our value engineering, and basically we are looking at which items are easy for us to modify. Maybe there's certain materials that we might be able to swap out for other materials that we currently have designed. Maybe there's a different way of doing something. Maybe there's a reduction in the quantity of something. And so those are the types of things that these different subgroups are looking at and saying, okay, yeah, this makes sense. Let's go ahead and make these modifications. There may be other items where there's a desire to hold on to it. Maybe we don't want to make that adjustment. And so that on bid day, you can say, well, it's really something that we would like to have and incorporate into the project. And if the bids come in favorable and we have enough money, set aside for this, the building committee can decide, okay, yeah, let's incorporate that into the project. So it's and it's also a way for us as a stopgap measure to make sure that the building is designed to a point where we stay underneath the budget that we're under.
Yeah, I think the difference is some decisions we could make now, right? We could swap out a material. Other decisions, for example, the incorporation of the UV filter in the HVAC system, we're not quite ready to decide, no, we don't want that, or yes, we do. So we've designated that as an alternate. And then we do need to make a decision on those once we get the bids from the contractors back. And we will prioritize those and they'll go in a certain order. So as Rob said, if there's money, once we get the contractors' bids back and we see, wait, they came in under what we thought, we've got some money, let's go to alternate one, which is adding the UV system. And then look, we can also do alternate two, which is, putting 50% of trees back into the project. So anything designated as an alternate is basically kicking the can in the hopes that at some point we could incorporate it.
Right, it becomes a timing question. Okay, I have some thoughts on the list that was alternate, but I will let the committee go through its process before I comment on any of those.
Okay.
And the only other thing I would just say, and maybe I missed it, I think as we go forward, for all of us, this is not solely a space or a building that's used just during the school day and the academic day. And I think maybe culling out a little bit more all of the public spaces. So for example, the gymnasiums will be used potentially 7 days a week. There's other space that, the Boy Scouts or someone could be using. I couldn't tell by looking at the presentation, and it just might be a way to help us demonstrate and show the community. And the one that jumped out at me was it looked like the cafeteria and the gymnasium in the presentation were kind of in the same category. And
What do you mean in the same category?
As if it looked like when the gymnasium was open, so with the cafeteria space.
So they're both in the what we're calling the public area, which is, and it's the public area in the sense that it's easy to keep open and shut down the academic wings and secure the academic wings. So the idea is that, yes, you could have one group in the gym playing basketball, and you could have another group in the cafeteria using it for a meeting or for, some sort of purposes. So we're definitely thinking of the cafeteria as a public space that could be used for community events.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. I think it's just more space, and it's public space. So we just want to really call that out.
Yes, definitely. I mean, you can see that sort of dotted line right there on the screen. That's sort of where we're separating public and private.
Okay. Thank you. That was it. That was it for me. Thanks again.
Okay. So we have a question from Diane McCarthy in the chat. Can you discuss what the MSBA will reimburse and what you are asking the town to fund? So Tim, I'm actually going to ask you to take that question if you don't mind.
Sure. Thank you, Maya. And good evening, everybody. So the MSBA funds has eligible, so they'll pay a certain percentage of eligible costs. And what's ineligible in an MSBA project basically comes down to a couple of categories, main categories. One is they don't fund certain spaces that exceed their guidelines. So for instance, the gym that we have proposed here that you see exceeds the guidelines for a gym the MSBA would fund because we want it to be community centered. So it's a little larger. So they won't fund that extra space. They won't fund either the space that exceeds certain caps. So there's, they'll only fund a certain dollar per square foot amount, which is not intended to cover the cost of construction, and they know that. It's a way for them to distribute money equitably across the state. And they won't fund certain costs that exceed a cap on site work. And basically that's because they don't want to punish urban districts that don't have big site requirements or availability, or they want to treat them equitably with suburban districts. So those are the components that don't get funded. And we don't know that yet. As Maya said, we're sort of working through that right now. Even the space to some extent is going to be subject to some continued evaluation. But we do know we do exceed, we know, for instance, the gym is definitely, a portion of it is ineligible. And we know we will exceed some of those caps.
And Tim, just to jump on the gym, the SBC made a decision to make that gym larger than a typical elementary school gym because it did want to serve the community. That was purely a community decision. We had calls with the Westwood Basketball Association, with Westwood Rec Department, and we heard from all of those groups, and also the Westwood Athletic Director, we heard from all of those groups that there's a real need for more gym space in the community. And so we did make that decision. As Tim mentioned, only a portion of it will be reimbursed. It's not that they won't reimburse the gym at all. They'll just reimburse up to their max, and the excess will be on the town. But again, that was a very conscious decision that the SBC made because they saw this as an opportunity to mitigate some problems within the town and sort of do something for the community.
So Maya, this is George Hertz. Let me ask a follow-up to that. And that is, when do you think on your schedule you would be able to tell the FinCom what your final recommendation for cost and what the subsidy will be from the state, so that the Finance Commission will have an understanding of how much the town has to finance?
So the warrant article itself will be the full amount. We can't deduct the MSBA reimbursement from the amount that goes to the town. But for purposes of drafting the warrant article, we will have that number by February, I would say February 5th, probably. In terms of the MSBA reimbursement, we will have a very good idea what that number is. I would say by the end of February. We'll submit on February 24th, we submit the schematic design to the MSBA. And as I mentioned, included in that submission is what we believe the MSBA is going to reimburse. And from what I understand, and Tim, correct me if I'm wrong, but if that amount is drastically different from what the MSBA thinks they're going to reimburse, we'll know that very quickly. They will make us very aware of that. And if it's not, then I think we will proceed on the assumption that the amount we're getting reimbursed is going to be fairly similar to what was in our worksheet in our SD submission.
Okay, but that's the end of February is what you're thinking?
Yes.
All right, so that means that really FinCom really can't hold hearings on this until sometime in April. I'm just trying to think of when FinCom can hold its hearings and do its due diligence on the financial component of where this is going to end up.
George, this is Nancy Hyde. That will be in March. It'll be in time for the public hearings.
Okay.
If that's the schedule we proceed with, you'll have it. I think what May is trying to say is that we'll know it in February, and you've got hearings at the beginning of March and later in March.
Okay. And Maya, one other non-financial question. To what extent have you folks been able to incorporate into the plan what I'll call public safety concerns in terms of the world we live in today, in terms of student safety? I know I have read some articles about schools doing some very interesting designs so that indeed, if there were a situation none of us would ever like to see, the school has built in some design to frankly make it as safe as possible for kids. I'm just curious if that ever came out, if that were discussed.
So it's a great question. We have had several meetings with Westwood Police Chief Silva and also with Chief Deckers from Fire. And we also have a security consultant that Doran Whittier is going to be working with. For security purposes, we're not speaking about this very much in public because we don't, these are kinds of design elements that you don't want broadcast.
Okay.
But we have been working very closely with the Westwood Police Department, where we've brought them in fairly early. We continue to follow up with them. And so we absolutely have that aspect of the design well in hand and will be fully vetted at the end with Westwood Police.
That's good. Thank you.
Maya, this is Chris Parita from the FinCom. I think you might not have answered George's question. My understanding, George was getting at more of a public health issue. So have you also brought in the Westwood Public Health Department to talk about future student and staff safety in the event of a public health emergency, such as what we're experiencing right now?
So I'm sorry, I thought you were talking about an active shooter situation, George.
Yeah, Maya, that's what I was talking about that. Okay, that's what I was talking about.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
All right. But Chris, to answer your question about the pandemic that we're in, so the HVA system that we have designed has been vetted by the sustainability subcommittee and is using the filters that, are sort of, I think, to achieve 90% maximum filtration when you recirculate the air. There's a combination of both fresh air and recirculated air. Clearly fresh air is better, but there's times when you can't have fresh air if it's too cold or, you have to recirculate the air. So we've designed or spec'd for filters that I think maybe 90% is too high, Rob,
I want to say, I think it's about 87%,
okay.
but the HVAC system this designed here meets all the CDC guidelines. In addition to that, the nurse's office is set up with a negative pressure and a standalone HVAC system as well, so that if in the event that somebody, was determined to have something that where they need to be contained. There's a space in there to contain them with a direct access out. If you can see right here, but there's a direct access to the outside without having to go through the rest of the building. So we have thought a lot about that sort of a situation and the health implications.
That's great, and it goes as far as it does, but ventilation is only one aspect of protecting students and staff from the transmission of disease within the building. And I was wondering if there's any other considerations that we see now where, we're trying to get kids in school, but we can't because of physical space. So was there any other discussion on that score about the design of this building?
So I think that as Rob mentioned earlier, this extended learning area that's in each of the classroom wings can be used. It would have been perfect for a situation like this because you can get desks out there, and it basically adds to the square footage of each classroom. In addition, this school was designed for 560 students, which is the maximum enrollment we see over the next 10 years. But on day one, when we open, we will not have that many students in it. So there'll be a lot, even though we're combining Hanlon and Deerfield into one school, there's actually going to be a lot more room than there are in either school now, just given the population, at least the expected population in 2024. And finally, we do have hand washing sinks in each of the classrooms. Again, that was something we looked at given the pandemic. So these are other things. And one more, the alternate that that Rob mentioned, the UV light filtration, that's an addition that would filter even more of the air than what we currently have spec'd. So if we are able to add that back into the project, that would make the air circulation even cleaner for our purposes. So, in between the HVAC, the extended learning space, the hand washing sinks, I think we've really tried to do as much as we can within our budget to account for what's going on right now.
That's great. I think it's important to mention all those factors.
Yeah, it's a good point.
Maya, how you doing? Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
I have two parts here. One is, just so I understand, the total projected cost of the total project cost you're talking about is about 88 million. And that is the total amount that you will be submitting, and then you'll be coming in hypothetically under budget thereafter by reimbursement from the state. Is that generally summarize what you said?
So it won't affect the budget. The cost of the project will be the cost of the project. If it's 88.1 million, that's how much the project will cost. What we are then hoping for is a certain portion of that to be reimbursed to the town by the state.
So that will offset the cost and lower the bond, for example.
Yeah, and I'd have to defer to Pam on how that would work with the reimbursement. But that's the idea, that the total project cost, it is what it is, and the variable will be what is the reimbursement from the MSBA? How much will they reimburse us of that total project cost?
And my second question is non-finance related. Well, this definitely impacts the Deerfield and the Hanlon. This is pretty much a community, the town of Westwood project. Can you, or maybe Emily, touch on how it's going to impact the other schools? Like, for example, when Westwood Station came in, the only school that really, or University Station, the only school that was really impacted or materially impacted was the Downey. But the town got the resources from the revenues from there. How will this project, programs from the different schools be moved over? Maybe the school, some programs that are making maybe Downey bust at the seams, maybe moves over, or things that maybe make Sheehan, overloaded, may perhaps move to there. Could you or Emily maybe highlight that?
Sure, I'm going to let Emily do that one.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, George. Well, of course, just the impetus for this project has to do with trying to address the needs of our aging buildings, right? And so we've been talking a lot. We really have 3 elementary schools in town that have some significant needs. And, we were lucky enough to get invited into this process with the MSBA. And having gotten invited in for Hanlon, in conversations with them, they've allowed us to expand the scope of the project, and they've expanded their financial participation so that we could take care of 2 buildings at once, right, by consolidating Hanlon and Deerfield. So I think that that is good news in general. I mean, clearly the ongoing costs of maintaining old buildings is significant. So, you know, there's definitely a benefit just by taking care of these 2 issues. You know, Martha Jones and Downey are relatively new in the grand scheme of things, and so they are in good shape. But again, if we sort of take care of the needs of Hanlon and Deerfield, then that allows us to really think about where we commit our resources in terms of investing in you know, our other assets. Educationally, of course, you know, I want to emphasize that sort of the philosophy and the curriculum for the elementary schools is the same across 5 schools. We're very interested in parity of experience there. But we do have a number of specialized programs that serve kids from across the district. So for instance, at the Downey School right now, we have the WABA program. That program, we would move into the consolidated Hanlon Deerfield, because what this project does is it gives us an opportunity to specially design space for the needs of these special programs. And so we're really excited about that. It allows us to move the WABA program there and the Focus program there. And that's, you know, a great opportunity for the
So
district.
basically it would alleviate some of the issues at the other schools. And is there any discussion, and I know I may date myself, but the Deerfield used to be the Montrose School at one point in time. Is there any possibility of, since the Deerfield will no longer be used, is there any possibility of renting it out, utilizing it for something else, recovering cost or anything like that?
Mm-hmm. So once the Hanlon, you know, Deerfield is up, the school committee will evaluate the Deerfield and decide whether or not there's a school purpose that, you know, that for whether it would need to retain the school for school purposes. If not, then the Deerfield would revert to the town, and it would be up to the town to decide, you know, what it wants to do with it, whether it wants to look for another Montrose-like opportunity, use it for other town administrative offices. You know, it really becomes a town decision once the school district decides, you know, we don't really have any use for this building going forward.
Thank you, Matt.
Emily, this is Nancy. Can you just, for the sake of some people who I'm going to say Focus and the other program you referred to, we might not all have an understanding of the acronyms. And
Sure.
since you mentioned that as space that could move, it might be good to understand what you meant.
Yeah, sorry, I forgot. I throw around acronyms. So WABA is the Westwood Applied Behavioral Analysis Program. We actually have a lower up WABA and an upper WABA. And so really those programs are specialized programs for students who are on the autism spectrum. And right now it's a district-wide program that's housed at the Downey School, but students from across the community attend that program. And the Focus program is just another specialized program that's housed at the Deerfield. It houses housed at the Deerfield, and it serves kids with sort of a complex constellation of special needs. Sometimes students are medically fragile, and so the opportunity to have specially designed space to really serve the needs of those students is very exciting. I mean, the building, you know, Deerfield was built in the 1950s, right? This is before special education was a concept, and so this is a wonderful opportunity for us.
So can I just follow up a bit on George's question? I know that when you first began considering this, you considered Sheehan, Hanlon, and Deerfield, and made the decision to go with Hanlon and Deerfield, acknowledging all of the work that is required at Sheehan. I imagine one of the questions that's going to come up as you start to talk to the community about this is what about Sheehan, which is in pretty rough shape. And so I know you've also done some work about thinking about what that's going to cost, and eventually, you know, with the plan to come back with that project. So can you just talk a little bit about that for the committee?
Sure. So back in February of 2020, the school committee realizing that, you know, if there was a consolidation of two schools, one of the third school, the remainder school, would sort of be left out of this project. And it allocated about $30,000 at that meeting in February 2020 to do a high-level design study of whatever school was the remainder school. We didn't know at that time what school that would be. So in June, when the SBC voted to consolidate Hanlon and Deerfield voted to move forward with a Hanlon and Deerfield consolidated project, we knew then that Sheehan had been identified as this sort of remainder school. The $30,000 design study money was then allocated to Sheehan, and July and August, Doran Whittier started working on that design, that level of design. They're currently in the process of looking at Sheehan. The good news is that we have piggybacked on all of the research that we did, all of the surveying and the feedback and the evaluating that we did for the larger project. They're able to use that. And really what they're going to look into is probably about, and let me get this right, I think we're going to look at about 4 different options that they are going to look at an addition and a renovation of Sheehan. They're going to look at just renovating Sheehan to bring it up into code. And then they're going to look at new construction for Sheehan on 2 sort of different sites. And we'll have the results, the final results of those design plans ready to present to the school committee probably sometime in March. And at that point, it's really sort of up to the town where we want to go with that. We have potential schedules that we could do. For example, we could do at the spring 2023 town meeting, we could go to town meeting and say, look, you know, we'd like to have design money for Sheehan that will get us all the way through to the construction bids. And then in the fall 2024 town meeting, we would then say, you know, it's been a year and a half. We now have a plan. We'd like to ask for construction money. If we went along that timeline, that we could have a new Sheehan open by fall 2026, which is about 18 months behind the Hanlon Deerfield School. So we certainly have timelines that, you know, we know can be done. I think at the end of the day, it comes down to the appetite of the town and, you know, what the town wants to do in terms of capital projects and school projects. But we're working on the design.
There's no opportunity for the MSBA to participate in any work at the Sheehan School. Is that correct?
Well, so we actually are asking the MSBA that very question. I'm not sure if we've gotten an answer to that, but we're, Tim, do you know, can you speak to whether or not?
You can't, when you're a priority project in the MSBA and you get one until that is completed. Now Westwood could start the SOI procedure, which takes, you know, a year or more, even 2 years, given the amount of times you do it. And you could start that, say, when Hanlon is in construction, and it would probably be ready for when the Hanlon's done. But you can only have one project in the program at a time.
So we could try, you know, we could certainly put a statement of interest in. Given that we haven't broken ground, we wouldn't have actually even had the vote at that point. When we put the statement of interest in April, it would be this April that we would put it in. We're not sure of the likelihood of success on that, but, you know, we can certainly put it in and see what happens.
Maya, it's getting close to the hour. It's close to 7. I'm wondering maybe we could address some of the questions in the chat.
Sure. Yep. So I see in the chat, could you talk about the decision not to have PV panels? So the roof is actually, of the building, will be PV panel ready. We do not have the budget to buy PV panels to install them on the roof, but it's ready for PV panels if you know, that's something the town wants to move forward with. But again, we just don't have the budget to purchase the PV panels. Do you know what the MSBA's cap on dollar per square foot is? If it is not fixed, do you know what other projects have been capped at? Tim, can you address that question?
The current cap is $333 a square foot. But it can change, but I don't think it'll change by the time we submit.
Okay, and as you saw in that presentation, we're more at $621 per square foot, so. Another question, how much land is needed for the geothermal electric facility? Will this be on the Shuttleworth property? So the geothermal system is going to operate through wells that we dig onto the school property itself. The whole system will be contained within that area that Rob showed you on the site plan. The original, the original Hanlon site plus the additional 8 to 9 acres of Shuttleworth. So nothing will be going outside of that property line. Please discuss timing. Why this year rather than next year? What is the consequence of waiting a year? So there's sort of three really factors to look at when you're thinking about postponing the vote from the spring. The first is the MSBA, the second is cost, and the third is impact to schedule. So for the MSBA, given that we're in COVID, that a lot of towns are struggling, if we said to them, we'd like to postpone the town vote from the spring to the fall of 2021, we think that they would work with us on that. We would have to do some extensions of study periods, but we think that they would work with us on that. I think longer than that might be more problematic just because they need to get their funding out, they allocate the funds and they need to sort of move them out the door. But we certainly think that maybe to fall, they would work with us. The consequence of waiting even just until fall in terms of cost, it's a volatile market right now. But I think we're sort of estimating anywhere between $1 to $3 million increase for that 6-month delay. And the same would happen with the project schedule. So instead of opening in February of 2024, we would open in fall of 2024. So I think the biggest obstacle is really the cost. And Tim, I don't know if you want to speak to that at all.
No, I think you did. That's about right.
Yeah.
Maya, if I can just piggyback on that, because I think the question that comes up from a cost standpoint, and Tim, I brought this up before, if you can just educate us all, contingencies. So if we went out for a vote in the spring or the fall, whatever, it's about a year after that when we go out to bid. So the construction costs that you're presenting reflect an inflation of time.
They have an escalation built into them.
Right. So let's call that a contingency. But built into the budget, there are contingencies, I think, and also probably a contingency line item, a blanket item. Can you just touch on that? I know we can't spend a lot of time on it.
So, well, as Maya mentioned, there is an escalation contingency, which we're currently carrying at 3% per annum, which comes to 5% for this project, given the time frame. We are carrying a 10% design contingency, which is intended to cover the completion of design as we move now from what's basically 20% of the design process through the rest of the design process. And then outside that, and outside the construction costs, but within the total project with the 88.1, we're carrying about just over 5% for contingency for unforeseen conditions and change orders and things that would happen during construction.
And do we know if there's asbestos in the existing building?
There is. We know there is, and we've carried a budget for that. That's based on the takeoff of what we know is there. And we also, it's not a very big building, so we don't expect any significant unforeseen condition. But that's what part of those unforeseen contingencies are for. If there is some hit inside the building beyond what we've carried.
Okay, thank you.
Maya, this is Tom Kilgariff. Quick question. If this were to not the vote weren't to be carried in the next town meeting, is that the one shot that the town has with this particular MSBA funding?
So I believe that the MSBA will allow us to go back out for a second vote. I think we sort of regroup, figure out what went wrong and then kind of go out again. So, and Tim, again, is that correct that the MSBA will let us do another vote?
They give you a set time, which I have to check again, but it's something in 3 to 4 months to revote.
So we would have another shot.
If you propose a plan that makes sense to them, that, you know, you have to address the reasons why it failed.
And then Tim, after that 3 to 4 month period and another shot at it, I mean, at that point, do they call it closed and you've?
At that point, they, as far as I know, would call it closed. I've not heard of where they extend it further.
And I'm sorry, and Tim or Maya, isn't it typically like 30 to 30%, 33% of the eligible costs that get covered? Typical, not yet.
To be honest, I'm trying to remember what Westwood's base reimbursement is. It's
I think we're at
35.
35.7 is our base.
It won't be 33% that gets covered. It'll be something in the 20s, most likely, given those caps that I mentioned.
Yeah, the net reimbursement amount, given the caps and the things that are not eligible for reimbursement, will probably be in the low 20s, low to mid 20s, which is still a lot of money.
It is. It is. Thank you.
All right. So do we want to take maybe one more question, and then, you know, we have opportunity to meet again for more questions. I
Yep.
guess that even after you leave here tonight, you'll have more questions. So we would, you know, we can have a meeting next month and talk some more on this, if parties are interested in doing so. So and maybe take one more question if we have one, and then we'll wrap up for the evening.
So if there aren't any questions, I'd love to sort of get impressions, what people's impressions of the project proposal are. If you like the design, if you like the look of it, if we're in the going, you know, this is sort of what you expected, or I don't know if we could get just sort of a couple minutes on that. I'd love, you know, we'd love to hear some feedback from this group.
Yeah, Maya, this is Chris Parita again. The only thing I noticed was that the presentation of the floor plans had 20 student seats per class. And if anybody else notices that detail, they're going to scream, because I don't know if 20 students per class is what we actually have in the school right now. But that may also take into consideration, as you mentioned earlier, that this building is a lot bigger than what we plan to use it, at least initially.
Yep, I think 20, oh, go ahead, Emily.
Well, I was just going to say, Chris, that the school committee has class size guidelines for elementary, and for K to 3, it's 18 to 22, and for 4 and 5, it's 18 to 24. And that school committee guideline, and also the MSBA, has its own ratios, which are very similar, very in line with our school committee guideline, were the basis for determining how many classrooms we would need, that along with the enrollment projections.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting that it's wrong or anything. I'm just pointing out that you might get a question on that detail if anybody notices.
Yeah, that's good feedback. Thank you.
This is Kate Wynn. I just wanted to mention something that I'm sure you have paid attention to, but I want to just put it out there. I really want to make sure that the traffic flow, when it comes to the safety of all those pedestrians and the different types of buses that will be coming and parents, that it's really going to be easy and safe for people to get where they need to be, even when they're running late to get their kid for a field trip or something. So if you could just speak to that really quickly.
Sure. So yes, traffic was, you know, a huge factor when we looked at the site and with the design. We did do a traffic study pre-COVID, which was lucky, because post-COVID, I think it's a little bit different. And we're sort of piggybacking off of that study. But as you can see from the site itself, we have very long driveways leading into the school. And that really is to mitigate a lot of the traffic. So you're not going to get, you know, parents backing up onto Gay Street sort of the line of cars backing out onto Gay Street. There's really enough room for the drop off, and having the separate parent and bus lanes is also really important, because that way you don't have kids sort of trying to get off the bus and run across a driveway where parents might be dropping off their kids. It's certainly safer than what we have now, where people back up into Gay Street. So I think that, a lot of thought really was put into the circulation of the site, and hopefully it's going to be a huge improvement over what we have now. Thank you.
Maya, this is George Hertz. I would just like to compliment you on the program quality of what you presented. A tremendous amount of thought and work has gone into it. I would just want to share with you, though, the one thought I have, and that is putting this in front of the town. And I think the financial context becomes extremely important. Emily's heard me say this in the past. I think as we go forward with this, programmatically, there's an incredibly strong case for doing this. And I think you guys have just designed, I think, a superb building. I think that in trying to, since we really can't do a lot of physical meetings with town meeting members and town folks, we have to put together some type of presentation that puts us into a financial context, not only in terms of some of the other needs that the school has, in terms of the Sheehan and maybe the other schools, but also other capital requirements the town has. And knowing Pam the way I do, to say, these are our obligations, these are the things we may have to cover, this is where this fits. Because I think my sense is there's a lot of nervousness and the uncertainty and the stress we're all dealing with COVID-19. And I'm just thinking that to make sure we are successful, I think the package that gets put together by you folks and probably working with Pam is extremely important, so that we can put this in some form of context where people understand what we're trying to do and they understand where it fits into the town's priorities and plans. Just an observation for you.
No, and that's a really important point. We've actually already corralled Pam into working with us. And, one of the key aspects of this project is understanding not just the cost of this project, but also the cost of not doing this project, and what happens there. And so, Emily, the district, the school committee, we're all working sort of right now to try and get numbers. What does that look like? What does it look like if we don't have this project and we move forward with Hanlon and Deerfield and Sheehan, as they are?
And Maya, what I'm saying, though, the other context is there are some other pressing needs in town on the capital side. And so we almost have to reassure town meeting members and folks who are going to be asked to support this. We understand all that. This is a priority. This is where it fits, but we haven't forgotten the other things.
Yeah. So we would look to Pam to help us out with that. We're working on the schools, and we know sort of what the school needs are, and we can certainly work with Pam and the select board on that other piece of it.
And I think also the FinCom, my sense is, knowing the FinCom the way they want, the FinCom's going to want to get very comfortable with that too.
Yep. And that's great. And that's exactly why we're sort of having this meeting, so we can sort of identify the issues that, that we can move forward. I think Chris is also going to be sort of key in that. So Chris, we're going to rope you in as well.
But anyways, thank you for all your work, and you and your team and the consultants and Emily and her team. I think it's something, if we can get this done and pull it off, it'll be quite a wonderful asset for the town.
Yeah, we think so too. And I have to, give props to Doran Whittier and to Compass. They have been unbelievable partners through this whole thing. I think Emily would say, I know Emily agrees with me. We really got, we picked a great team on, it's just been, so far, it's knock on wood, it's been a pretty smooth process. So I think we're all pretty happy with what we have in front of us.
I would just piggyback on that, Maya, to say that we also had, I think, really wonderful engagement from the community. We've had a lot of community forums. It's been a very iterative process, and Doran Whittier has been great about taking input and feedback from the community and coming back, having incorporated it into the design. And I feel like we're really landing on something that is the vision that Westwood has, which is exciting.
Agreed.
Hey, Maya, this is Bill Bruce from the FinCom. So first of all, this is impressive, what's been put together and what everybody has developed. I think I come at it maybe from a different angle than some folks. My oldest doesn't go to kindergarten until next year. And unfortunately, we're not in the Deerfield or Hanlon district. We're in Downey. So I'm very impressed by the school. I guess one of the things, I don't know if this is more for you or for Emily, is I'd love to see how, as this school comes to life, how kids in the other schools can leverage some of the technology and capabilities that'll exist in this school, as well as some of those kind of joint areas that are larger for the community, as well as the setting of where it is kind of in the woods, right? So I'd love to see, what we can do from that standpoint to spread what we've built here, or what we will build, to the other elementary schools.
Yeah, that's a great point, Bill. Emily, I don't know if you want to speak to that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would just say I agree with you, Bill. I think it's a wonderful thing to be thinking about, and you have me thinking at this point. Part of this process has been really defining like the vision for elementary education in Westwood, and that was a really exciting sort of precursor to the design process. And I do feel confident that that process and that conversation, which, by the way, took place with educators in all 5 elementary schools. We didn't just engage Hanlon and Deerfield teachers. We wanted to make sure everyone across the district was part of it, because we're one system and we want to make sure that we are sort of hitting that mark. But it is really intriguing to think about how can we get other kids sort of over to this setting in the woods. I'm going to think about that.
Thanks.
Emily, this is Nancy. On that note, I think about after school programs, and it's been a little while since my children were in elementary school, but some of the enrichment type programs that occurred after school, if they can be facilitated with some crosstown activity, that would be potentially a way, whether it be, performing space, where it might be more versatile in a new building than in one of the existing schools. There are just some neat things that can be done outside of the classroom day that can bring the kids into the buildings. And it's not always athletics, but it can be some of these enrichment programs.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm glad you mentioned the performance space, because I think that's another thing we're really excited about. I mean, our high school auditorium, which is beautiful and a tremendous resource, in the spring, it is hard to get a date in that space. We really do need more good space for our arts programming, for our music programs and our drama programs. And while this building as an elementary school doesn't have something that's like the high school auditorium, it does have a nice performance space built into it. And we're really excited to have that as a resource for all of our elementary kids.
Yeah, and I think the Westwood Rec Department too, which runs a number of townwide programs and has been using the high school and the Islington Community Center and other, and all of the elementary schools will also be able to take advantage of this school as well for kids across the district. Any other final thoughts or impressions or questions? And again, if anything comes up, feel free to reach out to me or to Emily. And as Carol said, we're happy to come back. I know we will be back, but we're happy to come back as many times to address as many questions. We will hopefully have more numbers the next time we come back, more firm numbers. But we wanted to make sure we got in front of you and we gave everybody a chance to really understand the current status of the project and these sort of preliminary construction numbers. And just give everyone the opportunity to really dive into the project a little bit. So.
Okay. Well, thanks, Maya. Thanks, Tim. Thanks, Rob, Emily, all of you, all this great work and for fielding questions. Thank you all for attending tonight, for your comments and questions. And we look forward to more interaction on this exciting project. So at this point, that ends our discussion items. School committee, any new business? Okay, with no new business, I'll take I see Charlie laughing there. Well, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So, second.
Okay, I'm sure there's no discussion about adjourning, but let's just ensure that we all do want to adjourn at this point. Charlie?
I vote to adjourn.
All right, Maya?
Yes.
Amanda?
Yes.
And Tony?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, it's unanimous. We are adjourned. everyone have a good night, and however you celebrate, please be safe and healthy, and we wish you the best in the coming new year. Take care.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.